Good evening there, everybody. What is happening? Hopefully, y'all are having a wonderful day today. So, when it comes down to it, I thought that I would do my own little video on this particular subject, and this is going to be on one of the fights on the UFC 280 fight card. And then after this, I am also going to do a full card review of the UFC 280 fight card, or at least of the three main fights. But I wanted to talk specifically about this fight, the Petr Yan versus Sugar Sean O'Malley fight, and a certain amount of people on my channel, or excuse me, channel, many of you may not be big UFC fight fans, or you may not pay attention to UFC quite as much. But for some of you that tune into my live stream a little bit earlier, certainly a great amount of thanks to you and some of the people who have recently thumbs up my videos and subscribed to the channel. Certainly a great amount of thanks to you guys as well. But anyways, I thought that I would talk about this fight because there's a lot of people claiming that this fight was a robbery. And in my opinion, was this fight a robbery? What I'll certainly say is this. I certainly thought that Petr Yan definitely did enough to win this fight. Am I surprised that Sugar Sean O'Malley ended up getting the decision in this fight? No, because it's very obvious that Dana White sees that he's a very popular fighter. He's a very big asset for him. And I think that Dana White basically told the judges, look, if the fight is anywhere near competitive, if the round is even a little bit competitive or a little bit debatable for Sugar Sean O'Malley, give it to Sugar Sean O'Malley, because at the end of the day, Sean O'Malley is a bigger asset to the UFC a little bit later on than what Petr Yan is. Sugar Sean O'Malley, of course, has the personality, the charisma when it comes down to it, and he has a great following. Do I believe that Sugar Sean O'Malley deserved to win this fight? Absolutely not. This is probably one of the worst decisions that I can personally remember in recent UFC history. Now, when I remember the first round, it was a little bit competitive, and I just recently rewatched the fight to see if my opinion had changed. It changed a little bit. Overall, I would not say that it was as big of a robbery as what I remember it, but it still overall was, in my opinion, somewhat of a robbery. And the reason why I say that is because if you wanted to argue that the first and third rounds were competitive between Sugar Sean O'Malley and Petr Yan, that's of course understandable. But I just don't think, all in all, that it was debatable enough to really give Sugar Sean O'Malley the decision. And in my opinion, there really should be an immediate rematch between these two. And Petr Yan, all in all, I just clearly thought that he won the fight in the first round. Sugar Sean O'Malley, of course, I believe he was outstriking Petr Yan by a little bit. But by the middle of the round, Petr Yan was already starting to outstrike him a little bit or get in some good leg kicks, get in some good body kicks. And then, of course, I believe he was able to get one or two takedowns. Now, some people may say, well, Sugar Sean O'Malley was able to get in some decent punches, while most of Petr Yan's dominance in the fight was just control time and laying on him. Yes, but when you score a UFC fight, those are the rules. If someone overall has a decent grappling position, or if they have the advantage in the grappling position, if they have, full guard or whatever it may be when it comes down to it, if they're grappling up against them on the cage and they clearly have the advantage there, the rules stipulate that that is the person that must take the round, at least all in all, if for the majority of the time they seem to be the more dominant one with the more dominant pace. The first round, maybe you could have debated for Sugar Sean O'Malley. I don't even personally believe that he won that one. I personally would have given Petr Yan that one. The first part of the round, of course, Sugar Sean was able to land a couple of punches, maybe two or three that were decently impactful, but Petr Yan came back with a couple of very decent strikes himself. And on top of that, he was able to take him down and pretty much keep him there for a good minute or two. So in my opinion, the first round, Petr Yan should have won already. The second round was the one that really was not even debatable. Now, Sugar Sean O'Malley, of course, he was able to hurt Petr Yan in the early part of the round within the first minute. But then, of course, Petr Yan, he was able to hit him with a whopping overhand left from what I believe. He was able to hurt him, and then he was able to keep him on the ground for a few minutes. And that pretty much was Petr Yan's most dominant round. And then, of course, you have the third round. Now, in the first couple of minutes within that round, Sugar Sean O'Malley, in my opinion, was winning the round. He was landing. And then, of course, eventually he would land a knee on Petr Yan's face, of course, which would cut him open, I believe, on the right side of his face. But then Petr Yan eventually would land some very good punches himself. And I believe throughout the rest of the round pretty much would ragdoll Sugar Sean O'Malley on the ground, as well as landing decent strikes and landing 3 takedowns and having complete control within that final round. Once again, the fight was competitive. I wouldn't say that it's the worst robbery that I've ever seen from an MMA scorecard. But in my opinion, did Sugar Sean O'Malley really deserve to win this fight? No, it wasn't. And in my opinion, it was still somewhat of a robbery because when you just talk about the regular rule books, I really don't know. Had Sugar Sean O'Malley been another fighter, I don't think that he would have won the decision. It just is what it is. But it's very clear to me that Dana White realizes that Sugar Sean O'Malley, that he realizes how valuable he is in terms of his following. And if I had to guess, more than likely, Dana White is going to try to get Sugar Sean O'Malley either a rematch with Marlon Chito Vera or overall do another match. Do I believe that he's going to have a rematch with Petr Yan? No, I don't. I don't think that Dana White wants to set that up. I think the way that he takes a look at Petr Yan is he had his chance against Aljamain Sterling. He blew it in the rematch when it came down to it. And a lot of people claim that that fight was a robbery as well. I personally do not agree. I don't think that that rematch was a robbery. I thought that Petr Yan made a lot of mistakes and he did not fight the right fight against Aljamain Sterling to beat him, at least in the rematch, which is unfortunate for Petr Yan. But in this fight, I really don't see the realistic way of how Petr Yan actually lost this fight. This probably was one of the worst decisions that I can remember in recent UFC history. Not that Sugar Sean O'Malley, not that he didn't have a debate overall as having good moments in the round. It's not like it was the most dominant loss or the most dominant performance that I've ever seen. But at the end of the day, in my opinion, Petr Yan clearly did enough to win at least clearly 2 out of the 3 rounds in this fight. And in my opinion, he probably should have won this fight 3-0. Now, once again, a certain amount of people will claim, well, you know, a lot of it was just grappling and him laying on top of him. Yes, well, overall, once again, when it comes to UFC, that's what a big part of dominance is in the UFC because it's not just boxing. It's not overall just about your fists. There's a reason why it's called mixed martial arts and not, you know, the hand striking events or all in all, you know, boxing events. It's not like that. All right. It's not just about karate. It's not just about Muay Thai. It's not just overall about, you know, those type of hand to hand or, you know, leg to leg combats. It's also about your grappling. And when a person gets takedowns in the UFC rule books, that usually is going to stipulate a great amount of points. And to be honest with you, this is not the only iffy decision that I've seen from the UFC this year. I also thought that the Robert Whittaker versus Israel Adesanya fight was a little bit iffy as well. But, you know, it is what it is. And there's probably a couple of other fights. But, you know, very interesting fight. I did not think that Sugar Sean O'Malley did enough to win by far. But it is what it is. He had a competitive fight with Petr Yan. It was a little bit more competitive than what I thought it was the first time around that I watched it. But competitive enough overall to beat that of a Petr Yan by decision? No. I thought that it was a very poor decision. I thought that Petr Yan, in my opinion, more than likely probably should have won 3-0. And if he didn't win 3-0, I think that he clearly at least won the last 2 rounds. Once again, Sugar Sean O'Malley did have Petr Yan hurt a couple of times in this fight. But the grappling and overall the takedown and the pace of the fight completely went to Petr Yan once he was able to take him down. Not just once within the final part of the 3rd round, but 3 separate occasions. On 3 separate occasions, he was able to take him down 3 separate times. In my opinion, there should be an immediate rematch, and I'm not usually a person that calls for immediate rematches. I'm usually a person that does not claim robberies or anything such of a sort. But in my opinion, this definitely deserves a rematch. It was highly controversial. And in my opinion, Petr Yan definitely deserves a rematch. Do I think he's going to get one? More than likely, no. But all in all, we'll end up seeing what happens here. But anyways, that's really about it for this video. Let me know what you personally thought on this. I thought that Petr Yan clearly should have won the fight. I thought that Sugar Sean O'Malley gave it a competitive fight. And I thought that it was a little bit more competitive than what I first remember it when I just recently rewatched it. Do I think that it was competitive enough to give it to Sugar Sean O'Malley? No, I don't. But it is what it is. Anyways, that's really about it for this video. I'm now going to continue on to my UFC 280 fight card review. And that's pretty much about it for this video. But let me know what you guys thought on this. And I'll talk to you all later.